So this week I read the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And Viktor Frankl is a neurologist. He's from Austria. He speaks German. He is sort of like a psychologist, psychiatrist type thing that he was. But unfortunately, he's also a Jew during World War II and, from Austria. So he went through 4 different concentration camps and had the most terrible experiences. He only told the concentration camp people watching over him that he was a doctor. He didn't really go into what he was because one of the things he didn't want to do there was stand out, so he tried not to be too special to anyone. But I'm going to try to leave out all of the anecdotal things that were displayed throughout the book, and I'm just going to tell you the lessons that this book has to teach you. So the first thing in the beginning of the book, he says, first off, textbooks lie. They tell you you can only live this long without food. That is not true. And I don't know if that was from his will to survive and, everyone there's will to survive. But the point was, these things weren't tested that were in the textbooks. They weren't really proven. And he says that you're actually able to live much longer than the textbooks say. And he also says that you sort of become objective when you're subjected to all of these things that are so terrible. You could actually think about it. It's weird. I don't know how he would really describe it. It's not like you're perfectly focused and objective. It's like there's a fog, and through that there's objectivity instead of no fog and subjectivity. Something sort of like that. So, now getting into the real psychology type things. So, as far as what is the meaning of the life? What is the meaning of life? What's the meaning of your life? He says that you are not the asker of that question, pretty much. You're asking it, but you're not really the one who should be asking it. It's sort of like in Breaking Bad, I am the one who knocks. You think that someone knocks on the door and gets shot. You think I'm the one that gets shot. I'm the one who knocks. So this is sort of reversing that, and you have to be more humble and not be like, I get to ask this question of life. What is your meaning? What Viktor Frankl says is life is asking you that question. You are put here by life, but life is asking okay, now what's your meaning? What are you going to do? So what you have to do is answer that question, but you can only answer the question, what is the meaning of you to life, through actions. So you can't say, this is my meaning or whatever, because it's life. It's not someone you could talk to. You have to show it through actions. And I thought that was a very interesting point of view. Life sort of summons you here in order to have their question, life's question, answered by you, rather than the other way around. So the next thing is, he says that the greatest courage is the courage to suffer. So that's sort of just a quote. Not going to go too much into that. So, there is nothing left to expect of life when life still expects something of you. So you're sort of giving up on life. But you have to realize that life still has expectations of you. Life is the thing that has summoned you here, and you're proving yourself to it rather than it proving it has some meaning or value to you. So it's just completely turning the tables, and it's something that no one would really think about. And he also says, to put it in modern terms, the meaning of life is fluid and a spectrum. So if you were to really get down to it, what is the meaning of life, and you're demanding that you have to be the one to ask that question, fine, we'll let you ask that question. What is the meaning of life? And he says, basically confirms what I've always thought, whether we're correct or not, who knows. But so life is a spectrum and it is fluid. So what the meaning is basically your current purpose, what you're currently doing, almost like presence, but he calls it responsibleness. So the meaning of life to him, if he has to be the one to ask, He has to be the one to answer. The meaning of life is responsibleness. And then he says, like, we should take the Statue of Liberty and we should make one on our, west coast of America. Make it the Statue of Responsibleness, because that's what really matters. And so he compares this to chess, where if you ask, like, the grandmaster of chess, like, what is the best chess move? Obviously, it's situational. Same with the meaning of life. There's no, like, this is always the best move. There's no, like, this is always what you have to do. Same in chess as in life. And he says to live your life as if you've already lived your life and basically messed everything up, but you're getting one last chance, and this chance is final. And knowing, like, you pretty much, as I always say, you know what's right and wrong. You just don't normally do the right thing for the most part. So he's saying, you did the wrong thing last time, you're now being given a second chance at life, and you have to do the correct thing this time. Another thing he says is, in the camps, a week was shorter than a day. So that's sort of something that I feel old people really experience. When you're young, a day is very, very short, but a year is very, very long. And I don't mean like 1 to 365. I mean like 1 to like 20,000. Like a year seems so long. It seems ridiculously long to go from summer to winter, things like that. But when you're older, it sort of switches around. And he said in the book that this was extremely like the case when he was, working so hard, like as a slave and being whipped every day. Every day was so long, but weeks just like flew right by. And so that kind of makes me sad, because that means if it's the same connection there, that old people are just miserable and kids are just very happy, and that's why that works. So I hope that's not the case, but it seems based on this that that could be the case indeed. Later on, when he was a doctor, he was examining someone who said that they had a problem where they would always sweat uncontrollably. I think it was just in social situations, in front of people. And so his advice, let me see what he actually called this. It was paradoxical intention. So instead of the normal advice of like, oh, don't think about it, don't focus on it, he realizes that the cause is focusing on it, but he says paradoxically, with sort of a sense of humor, you could either say to the person, if you're that like socially good, or you could just think it to yourself, that you are going to do the opposite of what you intend to do. So if you're stepping out on stage and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to sweat like a quart, you got to be like, okay, I'm not going to sweat a quart. I'm not going to sweat a quart. I'm going to sweat like 5 gallons. 5 gallons. So basically what happens is you can no longer do it. And the most common sense where this works is with people who stutter. People who stutter, it is a mental thing. So when they do things like sing, it's usually solved. But also when they're, in high stakes situations, they also can't stutter. He gives this example of a kid who got onto a trolley or something without paying, and then the guy was watching over him, and he's like, hey, you're not allowed to do that. And he's like, well, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go up to this guy. I'm gonna say sorry, sir. I'm just this kid who stutters. I'm just this poor boy with mental disorders. And so he's planning that in his head, I'm going to stutter more than I've ever stuttered in my life. And he goes up to this guy, and he just can't do it, and he gets kicked out. The guy has no mercy, because he's just a normal kid when he's trying to be I'm different, I don't know better. And so that is something very interesting that I think I've heard before, but I've never really tried it, because it's so much more common to just hear don't focus on it rather than overly focus on it. So that's definitely something I want to try out. So Next is things like happiness ensue rather than are, strived for. Like, you don't go for happiness, you go for a thing that makes you happy. And a really good example of this is if you want to laugh, you don't like look up on Google like how to laugh, and then you don't like sit there like just like try to start laughing out of nowhere, because that makes no sense. What you do when you want to laugh is you say, okay, what's the thing that causes me to laugh? A joke. And then you say, okay, let me go find a joke, or let me look up a comedian, and then that's how you get the ability to laugh. But when you're trying too hard to get the thing without realizing the cause, it just doesn't work. So this I related to IQ tests, where sort of with happiness and laughter, they're connected, and that's obvious. Laughter and jokes are connected, and that's very obvious just because, it's obvious. But if we were to change it, like people go after happiness, like I want to be happy, they look up like how to be happy, but they don't realize like first what makes them happy, and things like that. So happiness is another one. It's close to being obvious, but not as close as laughter. And so recently I've been looking at IQ tests, where a lot of times they'll go like all flubes are flukes, and all doobs are flukes. So are all flukes boods? Or something like that. And it's all just like made up words. And you have to really, really think about it and consider, like, if you pair this and then you draw a Venn diagram and you're like, okay, so this goes here. And, it's just really, really confusing the way it's worded. And so I was trying to make one up myself without using these made up words. So I was like, if all birds are animals and some animals can fly, can some birds fly? And the answer obviously is going to be yes. But what I didn't realize until a little bit into it was the reason why it was so obvious was because you didn't need to listen to the first part in order to get the answer. So, can some birds fly? You can answer that without hearing what I said before that. Whereas with these tricky problems, you don't logically know right away, and that's how some things work, such as happiness, but not the case with, laughter. With laughter, it's so obvious, like, do jokes make people laugh? It's like a yes. But there's some topics in life where, it's just like fluids and bloods, and it's just like, I don't know. You really have to like sit down and find out like this causes this and this is sometimes this, and really go through it, like draw a Venn diagram, and that's how you could figure out how to achieve some crazy things. So getting to the end, he said that people who fail suicide attempts are often, almost always exclusively, very happy in the end, like 2 years down the line. So they'll be like, oh my God, I'm so grateful because this problem in my life that I thought was unsolvable, like I finally found the solution, or maybe I finally found the way to deal with it. And so this gave me my own theory. So it's basically suicide mostly, not all the time, is based on thinking that there's something that you know for sure there is no answer to. And after studying Socrates, his most famous quote is like, if there's anything I know, it's that I don't know anything. Another common phrase is, the more you know you don't know. So basically, as you get smarter, you're like, wow, I was so dumb before, but also, wow, there's so much in front of me as well that I have to learn. So, I predicted that people with lower IQs would commit suicide at higher rates, because I also know that people who have lower IQs tend to overestimate their IQ, and people with higher IQs tend to underestimate their IQ, which is the same thing with, like, as you progress, you see how much more is in front of you, and you realize how much you don't know. So a lot of people who are committing suicide are people who have low IQs, and what they're doing is they're saying basically that they know it all already. So it's so ironic. Let me see what I wrote down here. So ironically, it's from an overconfidence in yourself. And this wasn't in the book, but he was just talking about how suicide, people who failed were happier 2 years later. And then all of this I just sort of like pieced together after that, while, you know, digesting that fact. So really it's about thinking that there's nothing you can do in your life, right? There's no way, I have no confidence that I can solve my life problems. And then 2 years later, you do, or you deal with them somehow. But I think it's so ironic that suicide is because of overconfidence. You think you know for a fact that you can't solve these problems, so you have no confidence, but really the underlying thing is overconfidence in your own mental abilities to realize whether or not you can get through this. So I don't know if that's insensitive, but I thought that was a very interesting conclusion, and that alone made me happy that I read the book, just so that I could piece that all together myself. So proud. Anyway, I know nothing. So if you've gotten anything out of this video, please subscribe, like, comment, and thanks for watching.